why can't we be more accepting and much more generous and be thankful for the things that we have instead of always trying to find things to bitch about? I mean, concentrate on the good things.
Welcome to a new episode of Most Memorable Journeys. My guest today is somebody that I met in Clubhouse, and then I started being in touch a little bit, and then I realized what a traveler this man is. He's been to 107 countries, and traveling is definitely his passion. But then I found out that there is a lot more behind that. There is a story, and I think this is the story that we want to talk a little bit about, except many other things. A second lease on life. And I want to welcome you, Andre, the AP traveler, Andre Perez Gomez. Welcome to Most Memorable Journeys.
Oh my God. Thank you for having me, Elizabeth. This has been really, like you said, a journey for us to finally sit down and have a chat. I agree. I remember seeing and listening to you in Clubhouse and the spark of energy that you provided and great ideas. And it's the kind of thing that somehow you're following the light, but you don't know why, really. So I thank you really for this opportunity.
There is a certain type of citizens of the world who got together in that international airport lounge, which had been created in Clubhouse, because we were all desperate to travel and we were all stuck.
That's true. Absolutely true. I mean, I felt like I was a caged animal because I get a thrill. I get such a thrill of meeting new people, to trying to understand how they view the world. Language is not a barrier for me. At least I thought until I got to China, since I'm fluent in 5. But the idea is to communicate, to break down barriers, to create bridges, and to understand where they're coming from and what makes them tick. And to me, jettisoning from one part of the world to the other, it doesn't scare me like some people that I know that is like, but you don't know anybody, but what if? And it's like, what if can happen even in your own house, So that's pretty much, it eventually became my passion.
That is so true. Now tell me, how did this all begin? When did the travel bug bite you? When did it start?
Oh my God. It's funny that you mentioned that because my mom was Brazilian. So that's part of my heritage. And we were going down to Brazil, and I still remember being very little. And when you still have to go up the stair, to get to the plane, it was a 747 from Pan American that had stopped in Caracas. And we were, that's when I thought, I love this. I mean, to trying to see what a beautiful bird to be able to just, take you from within hours from one place to the other in the world. I somehow that stroked me. So any kind of travel, being in that order, pretty much, planes, trains, and boats. It's all the principle of what's really on the other side of the hill. I mean, I really want to see is the kind of like following Alexander von Humboldt. Just let's explore, let's find out, and let's see how things do the daily routines elsewhere.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, you know what I sometimes feel when I am somewhere, not in my country, not in my home, which is either Switzerland or Cyprus. Sometimes when I am in a place and I look at people in a car, or I look at the window in a house, and I realize, these people live here. This is their home. It's I don't know what I'm trying to say here, but it's actually.
Elizabeth, I absolutely understand, because I do the same thing. I always feel that, like I bought myself a ticket to an event, like if you're going to the opera, but I'm not the player. The player, I'm there to observe, like how people live. I love going to markets and see what do they consume, how do they entertain themselves. Just like my last. In which I was in Yerevan, in Armenia. I mean, one of the first things I did, it was like, when I noticed that they had this humongous, beautiful building for the performing arts, it's like, okay, what do they have? I mean, that way it gives me a little bit of an insight of their cultural proclivity regarding arts. And it turned out to be an opera for kids. And I bought a ticket and I didn't know what to expect. I just thought that I just want to see this. And it was so joyous. And so I understand, exactly where you're coming from. Just walking by the street and you see like Madonna, the lady on the window just trying to gather their clothes that are drying. And it's like, okay, what's going to be next? And she already had lunch prepared. Who's coming to lunch, And then the very regular things that everybody does at different levels around the world, but just, that we're not necessarily accustomed to.
Yeah, this is exactly what I meant. And what you just said about the lady who is hanging out the washing, this is exactly it. People living, and we're all doing more or less the same thing, aren't we? I find it fascinating to see how other people live. And I understand, you've been so far to 107 countries. This is a lot. I have been to many. I've lived because I was a tour guide. And I always say that. I say that in every episode, but I do believe that we are all the same. We all have the same needs.
Absolutely. Oh, absolutely. I take issue of that's a lot because it all depends how do you compare. I have a circle of really good friends that all started in travel conference and stuff that they're way, way ahead. And then we sometimes, finally get together to exchange information of like, you cannot miss this. You cannot, you have to go and check this cultural part. But one of the things that I want to go back to what you said about the lovely lady by the window that you can relate to is the fact that how far a simple smile can really introduce you to a lot of people. You cannot help. Even if you're having a bad day, somebody smiles at you, you tend to smile back. And that could be opening like, well, where are you from? Hello, my friend, come on in. Let me, can I serve you some tea or something? Because it's not every day that they see that. Like when I was, again, back in Armenia, there are not that many Americans, that are in that area. And people were just absolutely so kind. It's just like, what brings you here? And I'm like, you guys, I wanted to see the history, our country, the idea that somebody is coming from the other side of the world just because is interested in you, that is golden. Yeah. And to me, I get to appreciate, especially the things that here in the West, we tend to always, unfortunately, and I'm not going to try to blame the media or anything else, but we will always seem to be finding fault with a lot of things. And then you go back to places that have much less resources and you seem to notice how easygoing and how happy people are. And that's when, in those long flights, I'm thinking, why can't we be more accepting and much more generous and be thankful for the things that we have instead of always trying to find things to bitch about? Concentrate on the good things and appreciate what you do have, as opposed to what you could perceive that are negatives in your life. And that goes so well into the things that I've said, I read about you, that I was like, I'm delighted to be here with you, to be that honest.
That is so sweet. And yes, I totally agree with you, because if you want, you can always find something bad. But if you want, you can also find something good. And I think this is what it always depends what you focus on. But I want to, and another thing that when you start appreciating life even more is when you are not well anymore, and you weren't well for a while and got more or less a second opportunity. And I think that made you want to see even more. What happened?
Absolutely. I was diagnosed without any fault of my own, if you will, with bone cancer in my late 20s. And I say no fault of my own because, some people usually say, even though that I don't agree, but I understand the logic that, let's say you're a smoker and you were a smoker. And it's like, well, you see, you inflicted that on your own, blah, 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 and somehow we always tend to find fault and culpability. And to me, it just happened. The doctors say, if you really want to place this in some sort of a box or something, yeah, you pretty much follow a pattern. You're a male. It happened in one of your joints, and in a specific age. So I can concentrate and bitch all I wanted about why me, or I'm like, you know what? This is not going to actually knock me out. I got things to do in this earth, so let's go at it. It wasn't easy. I've always been very independent, and I really had to unplug from my life in order to get better. And thanks to the incredible, wonderful, dedicated people at MD Anderson here in Houston, Texas, I'm here today because of them. I mean, I couldn't, think of any other way. Although my doctor, he disagreed. He said that your quest for life was so powerful that I cannot really justify you being here. You had an agenda that you still, needed to complete. And so, yeah, I mean, your first life, your parents gave it to you, but you just earned your second one. And how many times do you really have a second chance in life? So I think that's where really the transformation of how I view the world pretty much started. Although, of course, the bug of travel was already there. I guess I turned it for better, to really get to do what you're passionate about, and is to connect with people and to see how you can help and how you can be a positive factor in their lives. Sometimes, people, they just need a hug. They just need somebody to listen to them. Sometimes they are inspired by even your presence, a simple smile. And in our daily routine of go, go, go all the time, I know it sounds crazy and it sounds very cliche, but we really don't take the time to stop and smell, the flowers until probably now in the pandemic. And I remember when I left one time, I got really, really ill just from one sneeze. My defenses were very, very low. I was at the hospital I was there to get blood work done. And I couldn't even go up a flight of stairs. I had to take the elevator. And there was, and I always waited for the elevator to be sort of empty just in case, because the body was very sensitive. And my luck is that the doors are about to close. And it's funny because I always remember this like if it happened yesterday. And there was this lady that came in, she stuck her hand in, opened the door. And sure, I got all the way to the corner of the elevator and the doors closed. She was going to the 5th floor. I was only going to the 1st floor, and she sneezed.
Oh no!
I didn't think anything about it. I got to the 1st floor. It was 11 o'clock in the morning. That was when my appointment for blood draw was. And to make the story short, at 11 o'clock at night, I had to be admitted to the emergency room with 104 fever. And I stayed at the hospital for 2.5 weeks. They had to hydrate me with 4 different antibiotics and stuff. And my routine was stuck in that room. And I remember that when I finally came, it was around 5 o'clock. The sun was setting. I was with my mom and my siblings. And I was like, excuse me, hold on. So I walked, I had a crutch with me. And I sat on the lawn in front of the hospital and just to absorb the sun, because the room I had been in didn't necessarily have great sunlight. And something as basic as that, to see again the sunset, the different hues of orange and red and all that. And that day, that lawn had just been cut. So the smell of that, it became very powerful. And never again would I ever underestimate the good things that we do have in life, as no matter how basic it is, because it's just like what Shakespeare said, you only appreciate things once they're gone. And you're like, I don't ever have to wonder or think about that going forward. So in a way, that's, So I eventually got better.
Let's go a little bit to your last trip, Andre, because I noticed I started following you and I saw you were all over the place. You went from how do you plan your trips in advance, or do you?
Yeah, well, oh my God. I know. And that's why I always welcome people to say, you know what, laugh all you want. It is the best medicine. But I have a checklist of places and itineraries already built that that whenever I'm able to trigger them, and by that, I mean, I'm able to find availability or routing and stuff. And most importantly, the time, then I go. And in this case, for the listeners, this is a trip that I had to go to Germany. it was my first time outside of the US within a year. And I thought, well, I mean, I'm not just going to go and turn around and, fly right back. So I said, where else? I had thought about this before, where else I have not really been that I want to go and I really want to explore. And of course, Armenia was there, Lebanon was there, Cyprus. I was dying to go to Cyprus for so long. And in a way, that's the power of the media. There is a follower and that he posted months ago, beautiful, beautiful shots of Cyprus. And as an international affairs graduate in economics and all that, and a buff regarding historical geography and stuff, I knew about Cyprus, but I'd never been. It was one of those things that is like, I find it so interesting. And then, Armenia was the same thing. So I was able to actually put it together. I mean, I got a lot of the tickets were pretty much from miles, and the availability of the flights that I needed to get, and how do I connect, and the possibility if I were to need visas or whatever, and it all lined up. I mean, sometimes, yes, trying to put an itinerary together is kind of like corralling cats, I guess.
Yes.
Because I want to try a new product, which means a new airline if I could. And how am I going to get out of the place? I mean, how would I get back to the States? So that's how I ended up in Armenia, and it was an absolutely eye opener. I mean, for me, it was just, and it seems for a lot of my followers on Instagram that some of them thought that I was nuts. I mean, they sent me private messages like, "Why do you go to so many strange places?" And I'm like, "Strange to whom?" I mean, it's just discovery. Think about the history. I mean, think about. And at the end of everything that I posted, it was very satisfying to know that a lot of people say, you changed my mind. Not that that was the purpose, but from everything they saw and the comments that I've shared, I'm definitely going to put, Armenia in Cyprus, in Lebanon, even though that, is dangerous. And I'm like, you need to be wise, whatever you are. I mean, I had never been attacked, thank God, overseas. The only place on earth that I ever had a gun pointed at me was here in my hometown of Houston. So, there are certain things that you can control, and there are certain things that you definitely cannot. But that should not make you worried or concerned that you cannot go and explore the wonderful world that we live in.
Yeah, the only place I have traveled a lot, and the only place where something was stolen from me was actually in my hometown in Lucerne in Switzerland, which is hard to believe.
Oh God, I love Lucerne. Well, and I bet you it was traumatic, for you, because first of all, you don't expect it, and second, you realize and you think about it. I should have been a little bit more careful at the end of the day.
I totally agree.
That's the takeaway. That's the takeaway. I mean, okay. I feel that I'm playing cards with you, kind of like, okay, you just put like a 10. Okay, here's a jack. Because my revelation happened at the Vatican. Okay. I was doing Interrail. I was doing Interrail with a friend of mine. And as a Christian, that's one of the holiest places. And of course, that's where people who want to take advantage of the visitors. And I was a student, so I had very, very little money, and a good chunk of it, was taken away by somebody that, he was lost. Baloney. He bumped into me, and little did I know, later on, my money was gone.
That is crazy, but it's in crowded places, and I think for people who are listening, it's important to be careful. It's important, but then again,
oh God, yes. I mean, again, Elizabeth, you're absolutely right, and that's what I learned. Again, I think things are put in your path for a reason in this life, and it's for you to learn. And what I learned is that I was so enthralled with the architecture, with the fact that I was at the Vatican, especially as a Catholic, and all that I didn't pay attention to my surroundings. Obviously, there was somebody that was watching me, and it's like, oh, there's another, crazy tourist enthralled with all this. He's going to be my next victim. So I learned that when I had all those kids that are coming, oh, hello, and money, and whatever, I always stay away from being surrounded by anybody. because I know that in the process of trying to distract you, they're there for one purpose and one purpose only, most of the time. I'm not saying all the time. I'm very approachable, but I notice when people are in the prowl, and that's what I learned, back then. And I agree with you. I mean, you just have to be more conscientious and be aware of your surroundings. And that ties into one of the, I used to volunteer for Hostel International, one of the great organizations that allowed me to travel for many, many years, because, airfare or transportation is usually your number one concern for travel expenses. And then where are you going to stay? And, growing up in Europe, which is much more inclined to stay in, this is before, of course, Airbnb and all that, to hostels. That's how I was able to know that I had, clean, safe places for me to spend the night, that they were affordable. So when I had the opportunity to give back, I became the director of programming for the Houston chapter. And that was part of the lecture that I actually gave about Traveling 101, women traveling solo and stuff, is to give them tips to empower them to know that don't be concerned or don't be so petrified that you think you cannot do it. And you have to be, in a group of a tour that's going to cost you much more money with people that you may not necessarily like for you to be able to travel. If you follow certain things, and you plan it out, you can have a very safe journey without necessarily being at the mercy of somebody else. And it's exactly what you said. I mean, just that was one of the number of things that I always told people is always be aware of your surroundings, and do not trying to blend in as the way you dress. Don't start sticking out like a sore thumb, because you're bringing attention to yourself. That's why now that I travel, I barely use my iPhone to take pictures. I don't pull my Nikon camera. Oh, yeah, that looks nice, that fountain. I mean, it's like, how many locals do you see walking around with a huge camera equipment unless they're in a group shooting, I don't know, a commercial or something? So the idea is don't bring attention to yourself.
Absolutely. And, these guys are professional, lots of these people. I remember when I used to do tours in the US and we would stay in Las Vegas, when I arrived with a tour group in a hotel lobby in Vegas. And people were so fascinated by all the lights and the blinking and the slot machines.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
And there were guys walking around the hotel lobby just waiting for somebody not to watch their bag or what was, I knew that. I told them and I warned them and I told them to be careful. But somebody who doesn't know that may be unlucky.
Well, there you have it. I mean, that's why you were there to show the light in the right path. And that's what travel does. I mean, I really believe in the saying that the only thing that enriches you in life is travel. I mean, because it shows you and it teaches you that things are not necessarily have to be done the way that you're accustomed to it. And just because somebody else does it differently doesn't make him, weird. It's just something that you can, wow, I never thought about this. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the kind of thing that even in I even posted that. I mean, in Lebanon, I was so thrilled to be there. I've been dying to go even before. One of my trips was, to go to Egypt and then Jordan and then Lebanon and end up in Syria and Damascus, the longest living city since the beginning of time or so. And so to be there, just even briefly, and I was just filming and videoing the ride that I was in because my time was very limited. And there was all this, once in a while you get a motorcycle going by. And then there was there's two guys that went by. And that's the other thing that I love about being part of the Arab world, which I think that many times people don't seem to understand. They're one of the nicest bunch of people that I've known. I love the food and all the incredible stark beauty, natural beauty that you can find is not just, sand and camels or whatever, like some people tend to perceive. Mm-hmm. So the guy just made a really comical approach and he kind of like lifted his arm. Mind you, he's driving parallel to us. And I finally noted, and the guy behind him kind of like gives me this look with a big smile, like, pay attention. And what they're pretty much telling me is that since I had my arm out, even though I was holding on to my phone very, very tightly, that somebody can pretty much drive by and grab it and steal it from my hand. And I told that to the driver. The driver's like, oh, yeah, but not necessarily in this part of town. And I'm like, and I thought about it. It's like, why didn't you tell me this? Well, it's not part of his job, But the guy such a friendly, and I was able to capture that on video, just such a friendly reminder. Is like, we're happy that you're here, but be wise. And that is, again, another blessing. It's just that, the things that you get to learn as you travel.
Absolutely. And I think many places in the world have a bad name because of the media, because all the mostly fake news and lots of rubbish that is being spread about.
I couldn't agree with you more. I could not agree with you more. And one of the things that I can bring up, if I can bring up one or two, is Russia. I mean, even though that, and I always tell people, you need to differentiate two things. One thing is the government, and the other one is the people.
Yes.
And I've been fortunate to be in Russia a few times. The people are tough because they need to protect themselves. But the minute that they kind of get to know you as you, they are a bunch of nice individuals. I mean, they somehow want to invite you to drink vodka, to come and eat, or to tell you about how proud they are, and they should be, of their history. I mean, and it's the largest country on the planet, 11 time zone. If you like nature, I mean, my God, they have so many, things to offer. And people are like, why do you go there? It's like, well, I can always say, why do I go to Vegas or anywhere? I mean, I've been told, it's like, why can't you be normal? Like everybody if you want to go to a foreign place, you go to Cancun. And I'm like, okay, I don't know about what normal is. If you want to be entertained, you go to Vegas. If you want to go to the beach, you go to Florida. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but that sounds really boring. I mean, I like going to places like, Armenia, Australia, Mongolia, Turkey, Zanzibar. I remember somebody asking, that sounds like a bar. That sounds like a nightclub. And it's like, no, it's an island of the coast of Tanzania with incredible history of cultural history. And of course, that's when they look at me, it's like, yeah, you're not really the average individual. And it's like, oh God, no, I hope not.
Definitely not. And you are so right about Russia. You are so right about saying that the government, there is a big difference between the people and the government in any country. Most people, people don't always agree. And it's so often so unreal, the stuff that we hear. And now that you mentioned Zanzibar, you intrigued me with Zanzibar. How much have you traveled in Africa?
Well, I feel, I know it's going to sound very cliche. And no, and I'm not being paid to say any of this, but I really don't think Africa to me is like India. You can never get enough. I have traveled, I mean, it's the one continent with the most countries. I mean, 54. And I only been to a small portion of it. I mean, I love South Africa. I've been there many, many times. Cape Town is my number 2 favorite city in the world.
What's the number 1?
I love Sydney, Australia. I love the energy. I love the Australia.
Yeah.
The city. I love cities by the water. And I think that I learned to appreciate that when I went to high school in Geneva, Switzerland. And to me, Switzerland is still in my second home. I mean, that's where my brother lives now and all that, and all the different things. But like Stockholm is another city that I like. It was by the water, but Sydney, it is just magical, and I love their attitude. And so yeah. So, but going back to Africa, not enough. Been to Senegal. I'm dying to really see properly Eastern Africa and Western Africa, like Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire. And I've been to Botswana, Mozambique, because I definitely want to go to all the ex-Portuguese colonies, which huge revelation when I was there, because the Portuguese built exactly the same way that they built a city in Brazil, even to the point of what kind of trees they planted. And when I was in Maputo, I looked back and was like, my God, this could be a city in the state of Mato Grosso in Brazil, but I'm in Africa. Botswana, in Tunisia and Morocco. So I'm and Ethiopia. I'm very deficient.
Yeah, that's a lot. I mean, because I always feel that Africa is a little bit of the neglected continent. People go to all the other continents and less to Africa, and it's so beautiful. There is so much to see. And
but there is a logic to it for those who are not really well versed, because a lot of people really look for comfort when they're going in their vacation. I'm an explorer. I love to discover. And the infrastructure that one may be accustomed to is lacking in certain parts of Africa, which, again, I turn it around and I feel like that's part of the charm. I mean, that's part of, the exploration part. That's part of the history. Like I was dying to go to Zanzibar because of the incredible history, the mix of Arab and African and Indian and British culture all put together. You can even taste it in the food that is available. And if you do your homework, just walking the streets of Stone Town, it's just full of history. So when I was in Senegal, it was the same thing. It was interesting to see how former European colonies, how you find the influence of the countries that originally colonized them. Mm-hmm. And I found this wonderful. Actually found me. I mean, I was just walking and the smell of freshly baked croissants just full of my nose. And it was this wonderful little bakery in Senegal. In Dakar. That I was like, oh my God, who would have thought, So yeah, I agree with you. It is not necessarily well advertised. And I think a lot of times people think, unfortunately, but let's talk about it. It is which I disagree in labeling that, but it's the dark continent. So it's kind of like, oh my God, that's where, it's like,
it really is beautiful.
And I'm like, you know what, that should never be tagged on to me, is a cradle of humanity, is where it has such an incredible vast beauty. I mean, from luscious jungles to incredible, the largest desert in the world, to incredible water sources. I mean, like Victoria, waterfalls and stuff. So if you're an adventurer, that's what it is. True, you're going to have to do a much better job in organizing your trip. Because like I said, I'm usually an independent traveler. Because if you go in a lot of those tours, it's going to cost you, mm-hmm. a ton of money, and then that stops you from exploring more. Anytime that I have a chance, and I'm already planning, a couple trips within Africa, I would always say to people, go, just go, but disconnect from your world. Okay. So, and then start, and by all means, do not compare. Oh my God, look, they haven't picked up the trash here. I'm like, seriously? You're going to go across the world trying to see how, you're looking for the things that are at home, then stay home,
Yes, exactly.
Simple as that.
Exactly. Yeah. There's nothing worse than walking into a shopping mall somewhere, anywhere, and then just seeing the same shops, exactly the same shops that you see.
Oh my God, I cannot believe you said that, because I couldn't agree with you more. I understand, but I turn around and I leave unless I have something that I need to do there, because there's a shop that somebody said, oh, this craft. I love going to art and craft places. Mm-hmm. Like I went to this place in Senegal that they had in the capital city of Dakar, that they had ebony figurines, and I saw the guy who made it, and to me, I get an incredible thrill when I press the money in his hand. It doesn't go to the middleman like they do in Australia, the Aboriginals. They get very little for their incredible painting or anything. I know that this is going to his family, and he's being compensated for the incredible job that I'm taking home. And so, here in my home, I have a bunch of things that every time I look at them, I always try to bring something that is emblematic, that is simple to carry, because it triggers the memory of, how did I get that? What was the conversation that I had with that individual?
It's not the value. It's not
no, absolutely not. It's sometimes it's things that are very simple, but they're well crafted. And what made him or her do this? And a lot of the times it's like, well, my dad did it, or I learned this from my mom. It's like, again, family is so important, just like to us overseas. And before you know it, it's just like, please come back. You got a friend here in Dakar. I used to misspell it. I used to say, mispronounce it. I used to say Dakar. It's like, no, it's Dakar. And I thought, oh, okay. You sound like you're slapping me, but that's fine. I follow you, So, and that to me enriches me to no end, to feel that we can do anything if we really set our minds to, and if you point yourself in the right direction.
Fascinating, Andre. Tell me, because time is flying when you're having fun.
Absolutely, especially with you. We're going to have to do this again. I don't know.
Well, we can do more. What are your plans? What's next?
That's a good question, because I'm at the crossroad. I want to do something trying to help the current refugee problem that we have around the world. I was really affected by, unfortunate, the invasion of Ukraine. Because think about it, we all go about our daily routine in 7 months, going on to really let's go back 10 months ago, they were having a regular life. And nowadays, parts of that beautiful country is completely ruined just because somebody doesn't respect, the history or the one to be created and stuff. So that's one of the things that I'm trying to see how I can do that, since, I'm multicultural. I can pack really in 20 minutes, and I don't mind going to the other side of the world. And sometimes a lot of those people, what they really need is somebody to provide them hope, and guidance, because they are so confused and trying to make sense of something that really doesn't make any sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's where so I'm thinking about, all sorts of international organizations that might need someone as energetic and multifaceted like myself. So I'm working on that.
Okay, so we just have to keep following you on Instagram and see where you are going to go next, because I'm sure there is something coming, and I'm sure there is also going to be a few detours on your way to wherever you're going to go. And
oh my God, you seem to. The next thing you're going to know is you're going to tell me what color shirt I'm wearing. You're absolutely right. That has been a huge conduit, and I have learned so much from a lot of different followers that actually I hate saying the word follower, to be honest. To me, a lot of them have become friends. I have met quite a number of them who somehow are just going to be passing by where they are, and it's so interesting, to see how one has inspired them. Like I put something about Zanzibar or Bali, and it's like, you convinced me. Somebody who eventually contacted me back is like, and it was this woman, and she's like, I want to thank you. And it's like, okay, for what? What did I do? And it's like, and then she referred to her fiancé. He is the one who proposed to her in Bali, and eventually he told her about how he was inspired by some of my stories to go there. And she thought, what a way for them to start their lives together. And I'm like, do good and try to help everybody and go forward, So you're absolutely right. So
that is such a beautiful ending, actually, Andre, to this
thank you.
Very, very interesting conversation that we've had. And I don't think we're done yet. I think we're going to have to do more at another opportunity.
Anytime, Elizabeth. I actually am honored to finally have the time. I know you're a very, very busy, inspirational person, and you're a point of light. And so anytime I will make time, because it's so enriching to just have this exchange that can really empower other people who to just go and do what they've been wanting to do, but somehow they stay put. And absolutely. So yes.
Yeah. It's mostly fear, Andre. It's fear of leaving the comfort zone. And as you know it very well. You were ill, and I know it from reading books. At the end, we're not going to regret what we did, but we're going to regret what we didn't do.
Oh my God, that's one of my, oh my God, Elizabeth, that's one of my favorite sayings, which is true. I am a living evidence of that. Even though it sounds crazy many times when you think like, oh, let's go and do this or that. And it's like, and people are very cautious, which is normal because you're always cautious of the unknown. It's kind of like, do I jump into the pool? But look at the distance. Oh my God. Sometimes you just have to follow your instinct and do it. And then after it's like, oh my God, why did I ever even was afraid of this? I want to do it again,
Okay.
I agree with you.
Well,
Absolutely.
that's why all this stuff becomes addictive, because you actually realize that once you have broken that fear barrier, it is so much fun.
Well, it's funny because that's what one of very recurring questions that people do. Well, aren't you afraid? I mean, like I remember saying, I'm going to Australia, but that's so far. And I'm like, am I rowing here? I mean, as long as there's adult beverages on the flight up and I get to sleep, wake up, voila, hello, good day. And I'm like, they look at you like, wow, yeah, you're a different, you definitely dance at a different beat. And you're like, so can you? It's just, go, just do it.
Okay, so let's leave it at that. Thank you so, so much, Andre, for being my guest today on Most Memorable Journeys.
Thank you, Elizabeth, for the opportunity. And thank you for being such an inspiring, lovely, lovely person. And let's do this again anytime.
We will.
If you enjoy my podcast, please like, share, and subscribe to my channel. You will find all the information in the show notes.